Hey Gear Seekers, I'm Nick. This morning I was doing my regular internet troll for new cases and just seeing what's happening in the tech world, and I was looking on some Australian retailers' websites just at different cases that they have that I might not have seen, and then this popped up, something I wasn't really expecting. It was a new M-ATX case from Cougar that almost nobody has talked about at all. So I did what any insane person would do, and I went and bought one. Today, we're gonna take a look at the Cougar MG140 AIR RGB. It's an M-ATX case with 3 included RGB fans for only 105 Australian dollars, or whatever currency is cheap in your country. I'm gonna let you guys know if this case from Cougar that I've not seen anyone talk about is worth your hard-earned money if you're looking at building yourself a budget-focused M-ATX system, which is something that you guys have been asking us to do. So that's what we're doing. So let's do it. Alrighty, let's start off with panel removal. Basically what you want to do is just pull the top of the case off, and it's got this plastic case on the front here with dual layered fan filters. I would go as far as saying that this magnetic one here, you could probably go ahead and remove that because it's already got a filter built onto the front of the case. The tempered glass side panel is attached with these thumb screws. These are what you'd find on cheaper cases. They have a plastic cap on the screws themselves, and the glass panel just slides backwards, and away we go. Back panel removal, same deal. 2 thumb screws, really easy, and it doesn't have like a hinge or something on it. It's got 2 screws that hold the panel into place, which I actually prefer. Makes it a lot nicer to actually shove cables behind there once you're done building. It's got a bunch of included accessories in this hard disk sled here. It's got a hard disk cage, which is also removable. That's completely up to you. And it's got these standard accessories that you'll find with any case. So you've got some extra slot covers. For power supply support, you're looking at around, I'm gonna say around 160 mils if you leave this hard drive cage in, but you can remove it. There are screws on the bottom to pull this out. But for this build, I don't think I'm gonna be pulling it out. I'm just gonna leave it in there so we're all good to go. For motherboard support, the MG140 supports ITX and M-ATX motherboards. This is the motherboard that we'll be using for the build. It fits, I know I've put it in janky, but this is just to illustrate that the board does fit. I would probably recommend removing this fan here to install the motherboard and then reinstalling it, which is probably what I'm gonna do. I like to remove the rear fan when I'm building if cases have it included, because it actually makes it quite a bit easier to make other cables fit, not just the motherboard. Speaking of fans, there are 3 included addressable RGB fans. There's 1 up the back and there's 2 up the front. All 3 are 120mm fans. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already. So already, like if you're looking at doing a budget-focused build that has some decent fans included with lighting, already this case is looking like a pretty decent option. The included addressable RGB fans are 3-pin DC powered. They are not PWM. They're addressable with a normal 3-pin 5V addressable RGB connector with the ability to then daisy chain the fan. Speaking of, with RGB, there is an included addressable RGB hub with control from the front panel. There's a button up the front for that too, and you can connect up to 6 addressable RGB devices directly into the hub. That's pretty cool for a case in this price range. It also has support for motherboard pass-through, so you can plug your motherboard in and control all the lighting that way as well. And it's powered with a regular SATA or SATA power connector, so this just plugs into your power supply. For full fan support in this case though, you can do 2 140s up the front. You can do up to a 280mm AIR up the front too, which is quite nice. On the top of the case, you won't be able to mount a liquid cooler. However, you will be able to mount 2 140mm fans max or 2 120s, and obviously on the rear, 1 120mm fan. Maximum air cooler clearance in this case, you're looking at about 165 millimeters. So most decently sized tower coolers will fit in this case. So stuff like Cooler Master's Hyper 212, like the Noctua NHU12A, and all of those coolers should fit in here with little to no problems. GPU support with front fans installed without a liquid cooler up the front. You're looking at around 350 millimeters, and we're gonna do the ye old Strix test just to give you guys an idea of that clearance. Here is the RTX 3080 Gundam Edition, the Strix card, and you can see that this card easily fits in here. I'd almost go as far as saying with this GPU, you could probably put a front radiator in there too and fit the AIO. Remember, this isn't all the way up against that rear bracket too, so I'm gonna say yes, it will fit with a front cooler. You've got two SSD mounts here for 2.5 inch drives on the back of the motherboard tray. You've also got a hard drive cage with an included 3.5 inch sled if you're doing spinning rust. You can also mount a drive to the top of the cage too if you're fully removed the cage. And there's two more SSD mounts here. So in total, you could do 6 drives if you wanted to do that. Full front panel connectivity, you've got your audio connector, USB 2.0, all the lights and switches and everything to let you know your system's on and to power it up, and a USB 3.2 front panel connector as well. You've got a USB 2.0 port, a single one, 2 USB 3.0 or 3.2 ports, whatever they're calling it these days, a headphone jack, a microphone jack, a power light, a hard disk activity light, an RGB button, and the power button on the end. There's a bunch of tie down points for cable ties on the back of the motherboard tray. Around the rim of this motherboard cutout for the rear and the back plate, you can see that there's a bunch of tie down points along that edge too. One thing I thought was worth mentioning as well, that there is no grommets on the back of the motherboard tray for cable pass-throughs. But to be honest, for a case at this price point, that's no surprise. Another interesting feature of this case is you can get access to the basement of this case from this side, because the whole basement panel here that covers everything is removable. Now, I've already removed the 3 screws. There's a screw here and 2 at the rear, but this gives you extra cable management options. So let's say you feed your power supply in and you want to fix something up, or you want to redo the wiring for some drives you got in the basement, or you want to put an RGB strip between here in this gap, you can do that by taking those 3 screws out. That's basically everything you need to know about the Cougar MG140 AIR RGB, but let's do our usual thing. We're going to do a build in it. However, we're going for some more budget focused parts because that's what you guys have been asking to see. All right, ladies and gents, I hope you enjoyed the build in the Cougar MG140 AIR RGB. Let's take a look at the thermals. What you're seeing on your screen right now is the thermals are actually quite good here. I was surprised with the performance of this stock Intel cooler on the 12400. It actually performs a lot better than I had anticipated. So yeah, it's good to see that. We saw that with the panels off, there was about a 3-degree difference on the CPU, but what I did here was the front magnetic filter that's on the case from default, I pulled that off because the front panel of the case already has a filter. I don't know why Cougar decided to double down on the front filters. It just doesn't make sense. And with that filter on, it actually increased the temperature by a further 3 degrees, which is crazy. So just take it off. You only need one front filter on the case. All right, let's quickly chat about the parts of this build. The CPU is the Intel Core i5-12400. Now, the reason why I didn't go with the 12400F is there's no stock of the 12400F. So the 12400 is as low as I was willing to go for the system. I do have a 12100F, which I'm going to be doing an even more budget focused build in, but yes, make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for all that. We put the 12400 on the Gigabyte B660M AORUS Pro AX DDR4. To cool the 12400, we use the Intel box cooler. I decided that I don't think that it's worth using an aftermarket cooler on the CPU for this type of build. However, you can do that if you really want, but I decided against it in this instance. For RAM, we're using 16 gigs of AORUS RGB memory at 3200 megatransfers with 2 dummy modules. I only added that in just to fill out the slots. Otherwise, I'd recommend probably not using them, but for aesthetic purposes for this build and for it to look good on video, I obviously put those dummy modules I had laying around in there too. The GPU is the Gigabyte RTX 3050 Gaming OC. And for all the other parts or any parts that I missed, I'll put them down below in the PC part picker list and you can check that out at your own leisure. Okay, so what about the MG140 AIR RGB from Cougar? Actually, this case isn't too bad to build in. It is incredibly easy. However, just take into account that this is a pretty basic build, and if you were to add SSDs or whatnot, it may get a bit more complicated, but I found the cable management to be not too bad actually. Especially with the EPS power cable, I was a bit concerned that I wouldn't be able to make it fit. What I did was I took out the SSD sled and I've kind of fed it next to the edge of the panel of the case and it fit in really nicely. As for the materials for construction, it is quite cheap. So it is thinner metal than you're probably gonna see on other cases, but the overall execution of this case is quite good. The aesthetics, it looks really nice in person. In fact, the photos don't do it justice. Yes, it's got a cheap plasticky front panel, but I actually think that from a distance, so if it's sitting on your desk, it actually looks quite good. So props to Cougar for making an affordable case with 3 included addressable RGB fans that doesn't look terrible. There's some other cases on the market that have similar amounts of fans that are more expensive that just don't look as nice as this. Now, if they were to make a more premium version of this case with, let's say, a metal front panel and this all to be metal and like you know, that Fantex finish, let's call it that, the Fantex finish, I think that this would be even better. In terms of noise for the included fans, they're very, very quiet. The loudest thing in this system is the Intel stock cooler, which actually surprised me because it wasn't as loud as I thought it was going to be. Just take into account, I haven't used any of these new Intel stock coolers until building this PC right here. I think Intel's improved their stock cooler solution based on noise alone, because the old ones were just like jets, like they were crazy loud. My question is, why aren't more people talking about this for budget PC builds? Like I said, I basically haven't seen any reviews. I've seen almost nobody talking about this case at all. Why aren't we talking about it? This is a great option, especially because it includes 3 RGB fans, which is a lot more than other cases. They're not crappy RGB fans either. They're good quality, they're relatively quiet. Yes, they're DC powered, but for a case that only cost you around 79 US dollars or around 105 Australian dollars, I don't think this is actually too bad of a deal for an MATX case. Now, I'm saying this because if you've looked at case trends over the last few years, we're seeing less and less MATX cases and more people wanting to build MATX because of the size. You've got that additional expansion slot if you use a small enough GPU, and most MATX cases are a little bit bigger than small form factor, so people like that as well. So the fact that no one's talking about this at all is a bit odd, because I would say that this is probably one of the best value MATX cases on the market. And again, I will say that the build quality is not amazing. It doesn't have amazing radiator capability at the top. But I will say, if you're building like a Ryzen 5 system with an MATX board, like a cheap B550 board, or even an A520 board, or you want to use these new 12th gen Intel CPUs like the 12100F, even if you're wanting to use those really low-end boards, and you want your system to look nice, I think this is definitely one you should look at. I'm saying this because I don't buy cases very often, and this one stood out enough to me for its compatibility and its design for me to spend my own money on the case as well. So yeah, I also think it's worth it because of that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it and I wouldn't have done this video at all. In fact, I was just gonna do a build with it, but because when I pulled it out of the box, I was like, hey, this is actually not too bad. I decided to go a little bit deeper on the MG140. All right, ladies and gents, if you like this video, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, do all of those things, and do this other thing too. Look at the graph, look at the graph, look at the graph right now. You see all of these people that aren't subscribed? Comment section, you know what you need to do? You need to tell these people to subscribe. Subscribe right now. Look at this graph, right? It's very interesting, isn't it? Doesn't make much sense to me because I know there's a lot of people that watch the channel who aren't subscribed and repeatedly comment, so just subscribe. And if you like the music you heard here, I make all the music. It's available by clicking that join button, and it's on Floatplane and Patreon as well. Once again, thank you so very much for watching. I'm your boy Nick with Gear Seekers. You peak, we seek. And today, I was actually gonna go skateboarding, but it's pouring with rain, so no skateboarding today. Thanks for watching.